And Audacity in 3, 2, 1.
Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Barbell Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Christina Lynn, and I'm here with my co-host, Marissa Roy. And in today's episode, we're going to talk all about holiday eating.
Awesome. Yeah, and the holiday eating survival guide. And I'm like holding my breath right now because of what just happened. So I'm gonna call you out on it. I couldn't stop myself from laughing. But
I know, I was like, I can't even believe I made it.
I was like holding my mouth. I was like, I can't smile. I can't let her see. But so every time we record a podcast, we record video from Zoom, just so that we can post onto YouTube. But we also record the audio separately on a software called Audacity. And so this just allows the audio to sound better for you guys. But basically, so I'll hit record on Zoom. And then I'll count us down. I'll say Audacity in 3, 2, 1 and go. And so there's a red record button. And I said, okay, let's 3, 2, 1, go. And Christina is like, hold on, my Audacity is not working. And I'm like, oh God. Okay. So we started over. Tell the world, tell the listeners what you did.
Okay. I mean, so I get it. Like, it's my fault. But so there's a green play button and a red record button. And it's not like we haven't done this in a while. And this is literally our 51st episode. But I was clicking the green play button and nothing was working, but I didn't hit record. And so I'm just going to chalk that up to pregnancy brain.
Yep. You have the excuse, so you might as well use it.
Yeah, it's not because I'm an idiot. It's because I'm pregnant.
Oh my God. Okay, now we have that out of the way. Let's talk about the holidays. And I think a good way to start that is just to go over what are our holiday plans. We can share that with our audience. So I guess I'll go first. We are going down to Aaron's family, and they always just have just huge parties for the family, whether it's Memorial Day or Thanksgiving or Christmas, and they just have everybody over to his parents' house. So I will expect there to be at least 50 people, and 50 people for them because they're Filipino and Hawaiian. 50 people is it's just us. And so we always have this joke with his parents where we'll be going out to dinner and we'll say, okay, well, who's coming? And his mom will always say, oh, just us. And we say, that means nothing to us. What does that mean? Does that mean the 4 of us? Does that mean all the siblings and all the nephews and nieces? Does it mean the friends of those extended family members? Come on, give us some details here. And then they'll be oh, 30 people. And we're like, oh, good Lord.
So not just us.
Yeah. Nope. Not just us. But yeah,
hilarious.
It's always super fun. Last year we had a whole roast pig, as well as a couple turkeys for everything that we picked up from a place out in Virginia Beach. But this year I think they're just doing turkeys and hams. And again, they were like, oh, we'll just make 3 turkeys. And we're like, Jesus Christ. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's a big party.
So I heard something, and I can't remember, thinking maybe it was actually on Mind Pump. They were talking about how they're estimating 50% of families won't have a turkey for Thanksgiving just because because of the supply chain.
Oh
issues.
My goodness.
Mm-hmm. So my husband and I, we do Walmart grocery delivery. We used to pick up, but now I've upgraded and I'm even more bougie.
You bougie.
Super bougie. But for me, I'm it got to the point where I'd have to drive 10, 15 minutes, which really is not that bad. And I'd sit there, and there are times where I'd wait 30 minutes, 45 minutes sometimes for groceries. Oh. And I was like, okay, this isn't worth it for me to now spend an hour just going to pick up groceries where I could just go in and do it myself.
Yeah.
But at least I can sit on my phone and do other things. But now I just haven't delivered.
Yeah.
But yeah, we ordered a bunch of stuff for Thanksgiving because we were trying to plan ahead of time. And I knew that something like this was going to happen. They're out of stock for certain things. And I placed an order for a turkey, and sure enough, it was out of stock and it was not delivered. So I'm going to venture in store today after this podcast for a turkey. Wow. But so I hope that they have them. And then my husband was like, yeah, I was talking to so-and-so and his wife said that they still have some at Albertsons. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go venture out and try to find a turkey, but I'm going to be really mad if we don't have one because I'm not a ham person. I don't like ham for Thanksgiving. I like
Oh,
turkey.
wow. Yeah. I'm pretty much, I mean, I'll eat whatever, but turkey's just like so like the thing for
Yeah.
Thanksgiving.
And
So
you just don't have it that often. So it's like a nice treat.
yeah. Wow. That's crazy. I haven't
Yeah.
even thought about that or thought that far, but at the same time, like to me, it feels like November 2nd right now, but it's actually the 18th. So that's kind of how this month has gone.
Yeah. Well, the reason I was thinking about that and the reason I need a turkey is because we're hosting. So we are, again, so we're in New Mexico, and then my mom and dad are both in Florida. So all of our family is away. And so we don't have any family out here. So what we do is we kind of have we go over or we have people over for like Christmas and Thanksgiving. It's all the people in the area that don't have family either. So it's just a lot of like friends. So we'll be having a couple friends over, our neighbors and their two boys. And then actually, so one of my husband's coworkers, his wife and their son, I believe, who's 1 year old. And they just moved here. They've been here for like a week or two.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so, yeah, so they have like, they're living in an apartment. They don't have a house yet. And they don't have any friends or family in the area. So and then I feel so bad. We have one of my husband's coworkers. It's just him. Like he's not married. So it's
Oh.
literally just him. He's got no family out here either. So we invited him over. And the big joke is we're going to have him sit at the kids' table because we don't have enough seating.
The Bachelor.
Yes, yeah, bachelor. So we'll be hosting and cooking for all those people, which is, of course, I mean, you know me, I love cooking and hosting, and so I'm really excited.
Yeah, that sounds super fun. I love
Yeah.
that. And I feel like, well, actually, no, that's not the case. I was gonna say, oh, maybe that'll be us next year because we're gonna be moved. But like the Chong family has already firmly established that we are hosting next year.
Oh,
And
there
they're
you
all
go.
gonna come to us. So we're gonna have however many people crowded in our place. But luckily we have a very nice open concept plan, so it should fit everyone. Speaking of, so I was really excited to announce this on the podcast, like just that we got notice, but then I was sent a video this morning. So basically we got an email on Wednesday, was it yesterday? Yeah, it was yesterday morning. Aaron got an email that was just basically like, hey, we started building this morning, and here we go. 12 to 16 weeks from now you're going to have this house to move into, which is so fast, but it's like that's the house building process. So got that email, we're like, oh sick, can't wait, because we're going to go down in a couple of weeks for the Core Nutritionals holiday party anyways, so we'll be able to go see it. But so that was cool. And then this morning I told Samantha about it, and she took the liberty to go over there this morning, check it out. And she sent me a video of a whole walkthrough of the place. And they started building yesterday. And like the whole, like all the wood frame of the first level is all up. Like it's like completely built. The driveway's down, the backyard that used to be a bunch of weeds is all like, what's it called? Just like plowed out. And yeah, it's crazy. Like it's like taking shape, and it's like a thing, and it's real.
I know it's so fun, and the fact that you're gonna have your first house. So, Marissa had posted that on her Instagram today, and so I replied back, and I'm like, I'm gonna deliver right around the time that you guys close, which is also just so crazy. And I was like, dude, we're such adults. Like
We are adulting so hard.
houses, home builds, refinancing, babies, like it is weird.
Yeah. And I have a meeting after this with financial planners for my retirement funds. So like all the adult things.
I just want to make sure that everyone knows that I am the reason that you had your first retirement account. So if you ever become super rich, it's because of me.
Yes, yes. It is all due to you, and I owe you a percentage of the royalties.
I like that. So yeah, PSA, if you get anything from this podcast, open a retirement account right now.
And then assign 2.5% of all royalties to Christina.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. But yeah, so I think let's go ahead and dive into the episode. So again, we're going to be talking all about holiday eating and kind of how to survive Thanksgiving or Christmas Eve dinner, whatever tradition your families have, or whatever big events that you go to, kind of what your strategy should be leading into those events. So we'll dive right in. I think it's important though that we kind of set the tone. So if Marissa, I know you wanted to say a few things about this first.
Yeah, totally. So just kind of want to preface with some perspective and we titled this episode to obviously get people to click on it and listen and, get tips for holiday eating. But, I don't want to frame this as necessarily as a survival guide, like the holidays are something you need to be afraid of and to fear. And so, yes, we did use clickbait and thank you for falling for it. But, in all seriousness, I just kind of wanted to talk about something that I was actually writing about just before I got on this podcast, which was really when it comes to the holidays, I think a lot of people and a lot of us are in really blessed positions where the holidays are a joyful time where we are celebrating and we're spending time with friends and family, and it's really fun and we get to connect with others. But there's always, a few people in the holiday season that are, struggling, and there's a lot of emotional trauma that comes back up, or there's a lack of familial or friend relations that you can connect with others with. And maybe it's really lonely, and maybe the holidays are a time of sadness and anxiety and depression because of those reasons. And so when we're talking about this, I kind of wanted to just reframe and and this is not to minimize anyone's problems either, but if our biggest concerns going into the holidays are, am I going to gain a couple pounds of fat from Thanksgiving dinner or, all the holiday parties? And, our biggest concerns are our personal fitness journeys, which is a privilege in and of itself to be able to work on and be able to have mindfulness towards. I think that that's something that's really important to say right off the bat. So, if you are someone who the holidays are a positive time, and this is your biggest concern, I encourage you to express gratitude and have that perspective, and not so much in a way to just say oh, well then whatever, I'll just eat whatever and enjoy it because I should be grateful, but just to acknowledge the fact that not everybody is in your shoes in that respect. So it's something that I've been reflecting on, that I'm okay, I'm really grateful that this is the topic that I get to talk on for the holidays, because I don't have bigger, more pressing or traumatic concerns in my life to deal with around this time of year. But I know there's a lot of people who do have a lot bigger or more heavily weighted things to focus on during this time.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thing to note, and something that I wanted to touch on later, but I guess we can kind of talk a little bit about now is, yes, while you mentioned the main part of the podcast that we're going to talk about is how to handle meals, different tips and tricks that you can do going into an event. But at the same time, we really want you guys to be present and in the moment and focusing on memories, because maybe this, if you are having a good time, this is, maybe the once or twice a year where you get to see, your great grandmother or, family member that you don't get to see that often. And so if you're consumed with food and worrying about gaining a couple pounds, and you're not focusing on the people and the relationships and your friends and family, then that it's gonna suck. and it would be really difficult to look back on man, wow, the past few years I haven't really been able to enjoy myself because I'm so concerned about a couple pounds, more so than being present and being with family members. So I mean, I'm sure that a lot of people have family members that they wish could be there for these events and can't, and if they were, they wouldn't want to be focusing on food. So I think that's a really good way to kind of talk about before we get into the tips and tricks. But we really want you guys to go in and be able to feel and hopefully the tips and tricks that we have for you guys kind of does help alleviate that stress a little bit, so you can be more present with those who truly matter.
That is the goal. So yeah, I think one thing that's going to separate this podcast and just how Christina and I are advising and coaching our clients to handle the holiday season is really kind of, it is about alleviating stress, increasing mindfulness, but not in a way that we're trying to be rigid or meticulous, and really just allowing ourselves to see the bigger picture so that we can understand, how to approach this in a way that's going to be mentally and physically healthy for us. So yeah, let's dive into some holiday holiday eating tips. So I guess we can just kind of go bounce back and forth and go one after the other. So first one is hydration. It's super simple, but hydration helps to regulate your appetite, promotes healthy digestion, obviously helps with energy, and the whole, if you feel like you're hungry, check on your hydration first. You might be thirsty. The thing that everybody's heard, but we all put on the back burner, because every single new client that I talk to, they're like, oh, I don't drink any water. And I'm like, okay, well then clearly we need to work on this. So if there's any day to stay hydrated, it's definitely going to be over the holidays and for holiday parties, especially if alcohol is a part of your holiday eating scene, then obviously alcohol dehydrates. So it's even more important in that respect.
Yeah. And so it also helps a lot with digestion, which can be kind of difficult if you're going into a situation where you're eating foods that you're not used to, or you're eating more or less fiber. So making sure that you have enough water in your system can really help with that too. So you're not feeling bloated and uncomfortable.
Yeah. I don't have really much else to say on that one.
Nope. Drink your water, folks. So the next tip we have is, Marissa takes a huge swig from her jug, but the next tip that we have is movement. And so I don't know, I feel like I see this a lot around Thanksgiving, and I think it's because everyone knows that they're going to sit down and have this huge meal. And so I see a lot of people who are in the gym and they're like pre-Thanksgiving, movement or, workout. If you don't have time for it, like if you're hosting, or if you are traveling and you don't have time to get in the gym, don't feel guilty about it. But if you do have time to spare in the morning and you want to get a workout in, that's part of your routine, then go ahead and work out. But don't feel like you have to do something one way or another. But one of the things that I will suggest for my clients is, hey, after your meal, whatever, if you're having lunch, if you're having dinner, go on like a 10-20 minute walk after your meal, not because you're trying to burn excess calories, but just because it's going to help aid in digestion. And it's just going to make you probably feel a little bit more comfortable after eating something like a big meal. And I have a lot of clients who actually will go on walks with their family members. And it's just a nice way to just kind of go around the neighborhood. Sometimes people already have Christmas lights up, and it's a nice way to just spend more time with your family, but doing it in a more productive manner. So it's not something you need to force. But if you are able to get some steps in beforehand, if you know that you're going to be on the couch the rest of the evening, we like to prioritize movement a little bit more in the morning. And then I always say 10-minute to 20-minute walk after your meal.
Yeah, totally. And I think just like with the morning movement type thing. So like personally, I've always been I want to get a lift in the morning of, not only just because like it does make me psychologically like feel better of just like, okay, I know my muscles need recovery. Like they're more likely to take up this fuel. It kind of like helps put me in that mindset. But I've actually talked with a lot of clients who just say like, they feel like they make better choices when they've gotten a workout in on a day versus like a day where they rest. They feel like they're more prone to making less quote unquote good choices with nutrition. So it just kind of can put you in the right frame of mind. So again, if you are in a position where maybe you're not hosting or cooking and you can go get a workout in the morning, it can be very beneficial just psychologically. So just like kind of the mindset of like the whole day of Thanksgiving doesn't need to be thrown out the window, and like any kind of movement is going to be beneficial. And I'll kind of like advise on for like the people who are looking for what's the best type of workout that I can do to, I don't know, prevent fat gain or, get the most out of this Thanksgiving meal or whatever. And so I've done a couple of email chains on this to my email list in the past few years. But if I really want to get into the nitty gritty of it, lifting weights is going to be the best thing for you. I know like doing a really intense cardio circuit and getting really sweaty is going to feel like it's better, but it's probably not. And if you stay in the moderate to high rep range when you're lifting weights, you're going to get a good bit of that like cardio feel without actually doing cardio. And what that's also going to do is deplete your muscle glycogen stores. So if you don't know this, and I'll get a little sciencey here, but just bear with me. When you train, your muscles have fuel stores in them, and these fuel stores are called glycogen, and it's just carbs in a stored format. And so if we are not depleted or in a super big calorie deficit, those glycogen stores typically throughout the day and throughout the weeks are full, or at least not empty. And when you eat calories, they can either be utilized immediately, stored as glycogen, or stored as fat, right? And so basically, if you want to open up as much capacity to not store as much fat, in like the most general way I can state that, it would be to train in a way that depletes your muscle glycogen so that you can fill it up with whatever you eat, right? And so with that moderate to high rep ranges, 10 to 20 reps or so, and just pushing hard in the gym can do that for you. Now, what I'm saying here is not like a foolproof, like you're not gonna, whatever. And I think just the perspective that we gave of like one day is not going to ruin all of your progress. So like, don't hinge like your whole week on like, I must make sure that I don't gain fat from Thanksgiving. Like, this is just like, again, if you're one of those, like, I must optimize everything type of people, that could be something to implement. And obviously like a good full body workout or a good leg workout that like really just like taxes you can just leave you feeling really good going into a meal like that. So that's like the sciencey stuff behind it. So as much as like, just like running on a treadmill for an hour or like a circuit training workout might appeal to you, or whatever type of hit you think you're doing, I would really suggest putting the work towards lifting weights, because if there's any day to lift weights and then reap the benefits of it, it's going to be on Thanksgiving when you're going to eat a lot afterwards.
Yeah. So that made me think of a couple things when you're talking is, just kind of like one meal won't cause you to gain a whole bunch of weight, but also the same thing, like eating one salad isn't going to allow you to lose a bunch of weight. So just kind of the importance of like, or not important, the significance of one meal. It's more of your habits over time. Yeah. And then one of the things I think we should have maybe talked about beforehand is, like you were saying, none of these tips are saying like, oh, do this and you won't gain any weight. So there is a good chance that you will gain weight from this meal. But are you gaining fat? Is it fat, or did you just have a temporary increase in your weight? So we have a whole bunch of different episodes on this where we talk about this topic, but there's a good chance you might be up 1 to 2 pounds the next day, but don't freak out. Yeah, or more. But don't freak out. That doesn't mean that you just gained a whole bunch of fat. There's good chance that you just had a really heavy meal, and especially if it's towards the end of the day, you just have higher food volume in your stomach. Maybe you're holding on to more water, whatever it is, and just give yourself a little bit of time, maybe a couple days, maybe 3, 4, even 5 days to kind of re-regulate. But I think it's important to kind of like let that be known, like that is an expectation. And if you don't want to get on the scale for the next couple days, that's okay. Or if you do, just knowing when you get on the scale, don't freak out, expect it. But one meal is not going to ruin all your progress for the next couple months.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you made me think of a couple of things that I think are important to touch on. Like you said, I feel like maybe this should have prefaced the whole thing, but yeah, whatever, we're doing it now. And it's only, a little bit into the podcast, but setting appropriate expectations is huge, just like you said. And typically what I advise with my clients is just like skipping the weigh-in the day after, like on Black Friday or whatever. It's just like, it's not worth it, because if you are going to be the one to stress out about it, like what's the point if you know that like 80-90% of it is water weight? And like, like what worst case scenario, it's up a few pounds and then like you see it drop off over the course of the rest of the week. So like typically I'll tell my clients like just like skip the day or two after and like jump back on after you've been on your routine for a couple of days, and like it'll probably be either back to normal or like almost back to normal. So because again, like most of it is going to be water. And it really made me think of this viral reel that's been going around by Jordan Syatt. And so he is a great in Instagram presence, influencer, whatever you want to call him. And he's the guy that did the Big Mac challenge. So he ate a Big Mac every day for I forget how many days, 30, 60, something like that, within his macros to show that you can eat McDonald's and still lose weight. But recently, and just like in general, he's like always been super big on like the scale, it fluctuates, stop putting so much weight into it. And like, he's super, super great at communicating that to the masses. So he did an experiment that was like, he basically got into a hot tub for 20 minutes, weighed himself before and after, showed that there was a big weight difference that he lost from just sitting in the hot tub, then drank a bottle of water or chugged it, stepped on the scale, showed the fluctuation, and then did something else and then showed another fluctuation, and basically like was driving home the point that like water weight fluctuations happen day to day to day, and they are pretty drastic. Like they can be up to a couple pounds, like, or like at least half a pound with like just chugging a bottle of water. So from a Thanksgiving meal, if you are eating a meal that's so different from what you normally eat, tons of dairy, butter, sugar, it's probably going to cause some inflammation. It's going to cause some water retention, and that's normal. That's okay. And like, you're going to flush that out, and just know that those fluctuations are going to be super normal. And we do have a whole episode on 15 reasons why the scale fluctuates. So if you're interested, go look at that one. It's episode like 21 or something. But yeah, so you made me think of that reel that's been going around because it drove home a really great point. So yeah, just kind of setting expectations there. And no tip that we're going to give is going to necessarily prevent those fluctuations. But what we're really trying to hit home here is like, there's a number of things that you can do on Thanksgiving or the days around Thanksgiving that might make you feel better mentally about, making better choices, about feeling good going into and coming out of that meal. So that's more so what we're getting around, because here's the bigger perspective, right? Is what happens if we don't enter and exit our holiday meals feeling good and proud of ourselves and content with our choices. Then the guilt cycle, the self-sabotage, the furthering of getting farther and farther away from healthy habits and farther into the all or nothing mindset, into toxic eating patterns and behaviors, into self-sabotage and, continuing to overindulge, overeat out of guilt. That's what we're trying to avoid by kind of shifting the mindset from, okay, we're going to do these things to help us feel better in the moment so that we don't fall into those patterns.
Yeah. So like, I feel like we're just something that you made me think of. But one of the worst things that you can do is the day after try to make up for what you did. So whether that be significantly under eating, going to the gym and doing hours of cardio, because that kind of starts this cycle of this like binge and restrict. And not saying that you binged when you had Thanksgiving dinner, but that's kind of what your mindset kind of goes into. So that's what we want to avoid is the best thing you can do. Now, maybe this is something we should have saved for the end, but the best thing that you can do after your dinner is just kind of the next day, just do what you normally do. If you go on a walk in the morning, go on a walk in the morning. If you work out, but eat the same macros, eat your same intake, and don't feel like you have to deprive yourself or you have to punish yourself for, maybe you did overeat. But again, one meal is not going to ruin all of your progress. So we don't want you to get into any sort of bad cycle or relationship with food.
Right. Because it's just going to perpetuate, you starve yourself the next day to compensate. Well, then in 2 days later, you're probably going to overeat again because you're so hungry. And so getting back on a normal situation, a normal schedule is just going to allow you to kind of like re-regulate, and just, again, like over time, that's going to even out and you're going to be right back to where you were in a couple of days, or even just like at the longest, like a week's time. So yeah, I love that. Kind of want to get back to our list. If
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like that feeds into the don't let yourself get too hungry.
yeah,
So we don't want you to restrict, and whether it's the next day or the day of, don't let yourself go hungry, because again, one of the worst things that you can do is sit down to a dinner where you literally feel like you could eat your hand if you're so hungry and you're gonna overeat. So one of the big tips that we give our clients, and I know Marissa is the exact same way, is don't skip breakfast, eat in the morning. You can try to lower your carbs, lower your fat a little bit, and have a higher protein breakfast. So whether that's like an omelet with fruits and vegetables, having some sort of like protein smoothie or protein drink, eat breakfast, eat lunch, depending on you're having a lunch or a dinner, but don't go hungry throughout the entire day.
yeah, especially not if you do work out or do a decent bit of movement in the morning, like have a post-workout meal and like
Mhm.
make sure to eat those things. And actually in the past couple of years for Thanksgiving personally, because I said I train pretty much every Thanksgiving and I'll try to make it a leg day, of course, but I will actually have like a regular pre-workout meal, like a lot of carbs and what's the word for it, and protein. I'll just keep the fat lower and I'll train on like a normal pre-workout meal. And like part of me has been doing that to combat my, like, I guess, like what I used to do, which was starve myself until I ate that meal that day. And it obviously never ended up well. So I've actually been trying to like actively reverse that and like have something substantial and like be like, hey, listen, like I'm going to have this meal. I'm going to have a post workout shake or lunch. And I'm also going to eat Thanksgiving dinner. And that's going to be perfectly fine. And like my total calories for the day probably will balance out, higher than normal, but not anything crazy. So like even farther, I'm taking, I feel like the extra step instead of like trying to cut back a little bit, but like just keeping things almost normal. So that's kind of a judgment call, I feel like, in terms of like how much you feel comfortable scaling back and what's going to be healthiest for you mentally. So like definitely, like Christina said, eat, please, and have higher protein. The reason why we recommend that is because it's going to keep you satiated for longer. And if you are worried kind of about total calories, maybe if you're in a fat loss phase, then obviously having more protein instead of carbs and fats, because you'll make up for those with the Thanksgiving meal, and being fuller for longer on less total calories leading up to the meal. So that is kind of a judgment call for you based on like where you're at, what your goals are, and like what is going to perpetuate the healthiest kind of internal dialogue throughout that day. So that's what I do and what I suggest.
Yeah, and even if you're throwing down a couple protein shakes through like during the day, just to get some protein, get some nutrients in and calories in, I mean, something is better than nothing, because again, we don't want you going to that meal super hungry. So I guess we'll go into actually like, okay, now it's time to sit down, eat the meal. Well, what does my plate look like? So we recommend kind of just how you would go about any other meals. We want to fill up and make sure that a majority of our food is lean protein. So hopefully you guys have some turkey if you're not one of those 50% who didn't get one, or if you have ham or whatever it is that your family has, just filling up on some lean protein, fibrous fruits and vegetables. So if you have salads, if you have green beans, or whatever it might be. I don't think there's a lot of fruit at Thanksgiving, maybe cranberries. I don't really know, but if you're able to do that, because you're also, again, you're getting your protein in, but you're also making sure you're getting fiber in, and you're also loading up on your micronutrients. So I think it's really good to look down at your plate and make sure it's super colorful. So you've got a lot of greens, reds, things like that. And your plate just doesn't look like a big bowl of brown or white where it's like all like bread and mashed potatoes and cornbread and stuffing. So loading up on the fruits and vegetables, I think is a really good way. And I think I always post something in my Facebook group where it's kind of like what your plate should look like. And it's got a really good example. Maybe we can find that. I wish if you're watching the YouTube video, maybe we can put it in or something. But for those on the podcast, maybe we can post it in our free communities. So Marissa and I both have free Facebook communities. So if you do want to take a peek at that, we can link the description below.
Yeah. And I will say like, yes to that if you can. But what I will also say is like, I guess my opinion on this has kind of just gotten more lax over time because like, here's the reality of it. Like 90% of what is served at Thanksgiving is going to be brown and mushy and like covered in some kind of, sugar or fat or a combination of both or breading. Right. And so it's like, if you listened to that and like, here's the thing, it's like, there are going to be some Thanksgiving dinners where like you do have those options and you can fill up on those things. And if that feels great to you, then great. That's awesome. And you're getting in lots of micronutrients. You'll probably be fuller faster. The flip side of that is there's definitely going to be family gatherings and Thanksgiving dinners where there's just none of that. And if you're listening to that and you're like, well, I'm not going to be able to do that, or I don't even want to do that, right? Then that might be a situation where honestly, I just kind of have told my clients this year, just fill up your plate however you would want to fill it up. And then like what really it comes down to is I want you to actually just try to listen to your body of like, when are you full? And trying to stop maybe just like a little bit before you like feel super stuffed when you're eating, and like just kind of monitor that. And then when it comes down to, when you're going back for seconds or thirds, again, honoring just like, what is your body telling you and what's going to leave you walking away from this meal feeling better about your choices and more confident in yourself. And it's not about self-control, but it's about, having intention behind eating, because a lot of times I feel like we just eat because something's there in front of us. And it's like, oh, there's just like stuff laid out. We better finish this up. But like, there's gonna be leftovers. So I think really just being intentional about the food that you choose to go back for, if you're gonna go back for those seconds or thirds, like I call them hell yeah foods, or heck yeah for, PC version, but, but hell yeah foods, like the foods that you eat and you're like, holy crap, this is amazing. I have to get, as much of this as possible. Like I just absolutely am loving this. And so if it's a hell yeah food, then yes, like go get more of it, enjoy it, because that's worth it. But if it was just there, it was just fine. Like don't get seconds of that. It's just fine. It's just there. Right. Like, so be intentional. And especially if you're just not in a position or a place where there are a ton of the leaner options, then like just fill your plate how you would normally fill it and try to walk away not being stuffed and guilty. Try to walk away being full and happy. And there is definitely like a line. Everyone has their threshold of like when they cross over that line. And the final thing I will say on that too is like, I feel like there are some families, especially sibling rivalries and just dynamics in, Thanksgiving and holiday meals where it almost turns into an eating competition. And don't put the pressure on yourself to do that or put yourself into that competition if that's not what you want. Don't let other people peer pressure you into saying, oh, I can eat more, or I can eat thirds, or especially if you have siblings and it's like just a big rivalry type of situation where it's always been, well, this brother eats more than that brother and they're trying to like have an eat off. If that's not what you want, you don't have to subject yourself to that, and just eat what makes you feel good. And so it can be complex, especially if there's like years of history behind it, but just kind of like know that you can make the decision now to change that if you want to.
Yeah. And I think again, a lot of different things that I was thinking about is one of the things, because I used to get this too, is I will have family members who will make comments about the choices that I make. A lot of times it's too because they know I'm into fitness, they know I'm a fitness coach. And so I think that sometimes they will judge my plate. And so I'll get this sometimes like, I can't believe you're eating that much, or like, why aren't you eating this, or vice versa. So don't let anyone pressure you into eating something that you don't want to eat. and kind of like Marissa said, or the amount of food that you eat. And then the other thing I was thinking about when you're talking about your plate and what it looks like, yeah, of course, if in a perfect scenario, if you're able to do the lean protein, the fruits and vegetables, then yeah, absolutely do it. But if you can't, it's not a big deal. You don't need to freak out about it. And again, it's just one meal. So something that you can do to combat that is you can bring a dish. So you can bring a side dish. Like Marissa was saying, a lot of things are smothered in gravy and they've got butter, we got breadings and sugar toppings. So if you know that that's how your family likes to eat, if you want to bring a salad, or if you want to bring a healthier version of green bean casserole, or you want to, bring something, then yeah, go ahead and do it. But what I don't want you guys to do is bring your own food. Literally food just for you, where you're bringing like a Tupperware full of like chicken, rice, and broccoli because you don't want to eat, your Thanksgiving meal with your family. I don't think it's worth it. And it's again, it's just one meal. Unless you're in prep. If you're in prep, then yeah, bring your Tupperware and or try to make your dish work. But I like to bring a dish because it's something that you guys can all eat together, and it's not something that's just for you. Because I think that if you're not allowing yourself to eat certain things, that can also kind of be a red flag and something we need to work on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are all really good points. I think we've pretty much covered everything in that kind of category that I feel like we need to cover. So the next thing is just alcohol, because that is a part of Thanksgiving for some families. And so basically with that, alcohol does impair judgment. And if we go in with great intentions and we have a couple of drinks, it can definitely kind of just, make those intentions seem blurrier, or the lines there seem blurrier, and just not follow through on those decisions quite as easily. So definitely when it comes to, I think, again, it comes down to intention and what is your priority level with your holiday eating? Like, are you really wary? Are you trying to cut back? Are you trying to make sure that you don't overindulge too much? Or do you just not care? Because if you're the former, then okay, definitely let's try to monitor alcohol consumption, because then your decisions will be less impaired. But then if you just really don't give a shit, like, and this is just like, whatever, I'm just gonna eat whatever I want this day, kind of deal with the consequences and just kind of go from there, be consistent afterwards. That's an okay stance to have. Like, I want to make it very clear that like you can do that for Thanksgiving and probably be fine within a week or two's time. So like, don't think that that's not a thing. But again, I just feel like with the population that we talk to, it is a kind of a delicate balance of like, if we do get into feeling really guilty after eating whatever we want and eating too much, then that can open up bad doors. So just trying to be mindful. I think a big part of this is self-awareness, and knowing where do you lie on that spectrum. Like, can you just like say F it for a day and then jump right back on and be fine? Or like, is doing that going to bring you down a spiral and put you in a negative headspace, right? So I think when it comes to monitoring your alcohol consumption, monitoring your food intake in general, having a self-awareness of like what is going to be the best approach for you is really important. So kind of just exploring all those pathways here on the podcast, so you can kind of see which personality do I align the most with, that is going to help guide me towards what my decisions should be.
Yeah. So I think that that's a really good segue into, should you track or should you not track on Thanksgiving? And so when we talk about tracking, we're talking about tracking your calories or tracking your macros. So I tell my clients, like, it's up to you. Like, I'm not going to tell you what you should do. And a lot of it, like Marissa said, is how are you going to feel afterwards, right? Like, are you going to feel good about taking some time off? Do you want to track, at least your protein intake, just to make sure you're reaching those levels, and everything else you're just kind of saying, well, whatever happens. Is tracking going to be helpful for you? Is that something that you feel like you go into social events and it's not something that you're normally capable of doing and you want to practice? It's just kind of like, where are you in your journey and what's going to make you feel good? The other thing I kind of talk about is like, well, where are we in terms of your goals? Are you actively dieting? If you're actively dieting, then maybe we do want to loosely track. If you're not and you're well into an off season or maintenance phase, then yeah, go ahead and take the day off. Like it's just, I don't have a right or a wrong. It's just wherever you are, wherever your goals are, and what's going to make you feel your best after this meal.
Yeah. And I think the thing that I need to add on to that is like I guess the cost benefit analysis that you kind of have to go through to
Yeah, that's
decide
big.
that. Because the number one thing that I think happens for people with great intentions who go into that meal thinking, okay, I'm going to track and it's going to help me stay on track. It's going to be great. The problem is that, we typically, if we're tracking our food, we're eating a lot of like whole food based nutrient dense stuff that's like not super high in calorie per unit of volume. Thanksgiving food is the opposite. So it's literally like 1 ounce of something could be like 150 calories. Like it's just like so dense. And so you could fill your plate up in a way that like you look at it and you're like, this is good. Like I'm implementing moderation. I feel good about this and confident, right? And then if you were to go into your app later and plug it all in and see that it's like 3,000 calories for the plate, like what is that going to do for you? Is it going to completely negate the fact that you were proud of yourself? Is it going to put you into a negative spiral? Is it going to just like make you say, well, screw it. Since I already went over my calories, I might as well just eat more because like, I feel like I could eat more and I already messed up. Right. So really that cost benefit analysis that's where I see a lot of it kind of unfold is for people who are in those shoes. Just kind of be aware of like, is it going to be more stress than it's worth? And like personally, again, this year with my clients, I've pretty much told them like, I don't see a benefit in you tracking. I can't control whether or not you do it, but here's why I think it could probably just do more harm than it's worth.
Yeah. So it's kind of what I say is I would say probably 95% of my clients, it's, hey, let's not track. But for those of those clients, am I saying that right?
For those clients.
Yeah. For those clients who are dieting or they have, let's say a goal coming up in February or March that they're trying to reach. Yeah. Again, it's that one meal type thing. But at the same time, I'm like, hey, let's just be like a little bit more mindful. You don't have to track if you don't want to. But like you said, like let's maybe not have 3 pieces of pie, instead have 2 or have 1. So it all depends on where you are. And we talk about if you do have specific goals and they have a time bound, restriction of some sort, then maybe we do need to have a tiny bit of sacrifice and a little bit of motivation and discipline when we go into a meal like this. But at the same time, it's not like you have to eat a salad and be a rabbit or bring your Tupperware. But you might need to make a little bit of better choices than you were if you weren't dieting.
Right. So yeah, just like weigh out the importance to you of like how much self-restraint do you feel like you need to exercise to walk away from that feeling like you're still either moving forward or not going backwards, if that is what matters to you at the time. And like even if you're in an active fat loss phase, that doesn't necessarily mean that you immediately need to exercise a ton of self-restraint. It's like, okay, well, how time bound is the fat loss? How important is it to you? Right. And it's like there's a lot of situations where I feel like people go into it thinking, well, that means I should definitely track and like hold back and do all these things. And I'm like, well, okay, we don't necessarily have a deadline and like we're seeing plenty of progress. If you bounce up 3 pounds this week and it comes down in the next 2 weeks, like, and we stay back on track after that, like, is that really going to be a detriment to our total progress? And the answer is most likely for a lot of people, no, unless we're really prepping for something super, super specific. That's very like time bound and in that sense. So
yeah. So I'm thinking of a couple clients that have weddings and stuff in like March, February, March timeframe. And yeah, that's something, it's a little bit bigger than like, oh, I want to look good for summer.
Yeah. Totally.
But yeah, so I think it's like Marissa said, is just kind of weighing the pros and cons and like, what is this event if you do have something coming up and kind of, again, that cost analysis. So I think that was a really good summary for that.
Yeah, I think the other thing, so you brought this up, but I kind of wanted to talk about just how even like I had someone come back from vacation. I advised them to do this, but basically kind of like allocating your macros or like auto regulating your hunger across the week. So what we don't endorse is compensation and saying like, oh, well, if I, my target calories is 1800. So if I just eat 1500 every day of the week this week, then, all those extra calories will just go into Thanksgiving. Let's not do that. But here's what we could do. And so this is for people who are either in a reverse diet, a maintenance, a bulking phase. I've got a number of clients in these shoes where it's like they're kind of in a situation where they're already force feeding themselves on a day-to-day basis. And it's really hard for them to just like get their normal food intake in. So for those people, I kind of tell them, especially if they like go on a vacation or they have this holiday meal that they know the scale is going to spike kind of like out of the norm more than usual, then I'll say like, listen, okay, throughout this week, what we can do is I want you to eat your normal meals, like your breakfast, lunch, dinner, pre-workout, whatever, should be the same. But, all those extra snacks that like you kind of have to force in, like the food that like you're kind of struggling to get in at the end of the day, that sort of stuff, if you want to leave that be just so that you're not so full going into Thanksgiving, we can leave that be. Let those carbs and fats kind of like fall where they may. Make sure to hit your protein, but like, we can kind of just like ease off the gas pedal on that just for this week so that you just don't feel quite as like bloated or full going into the Thanksgiving meal, because obviously that'll exacerbate those feelings. So that's kind of like an intuitive-ish way to do that. And again, that just serves as great practice for anyone who's like really looking to eventually get away from tracking. Like, how do I like fully listen to my body's signals and, auto regulate my intake according to that? Again, it's not deprivation. It's not cutting things back, but it's just like, if we're in the position already where we're eating a plenty good amount, we can kind of just like, let them fall where they may, right? Make sure to hit the absolute minimum baseline of protein and then just kind of go from there.
Yeah, so that it's definitely something that I will implement with clients, but it's not something that I want them to get in a habit of,
Right.
because it's not like, oh, well, I have a dinner on Saturday, or I have this, or I have, and they're doing it every single week.
Yeah, no.
We do have carb cycling, and that's something that we will implement with some clients and refeeds and things like that. But for majority, our clients, their macros are the same every single day, and we want to make sure that they're hitting that intake. So yeah, if they have a day where they're not hungry, well, then don't force feed and just carry it over to the next day. And if you're hungry, eat. If you're not, then don't. But we don't want clients to feel like they have to starve themselves leading up to the days before Thanksgiving. So it's kind of just a personal preference and where your intake is and where your hunger levels are.
Yeah. And then what you said about it not being a regular thing, very true. Like this is like very specific to like these events and like, just because we know that like a Thanksgiving meal will probably put us over our regular eating targets, just because we know that these holiday parties are going to be a little bit more indulgences than otherwise. So like, for example, what my coach and I are doing is my day-to-day macros right now just like aren't like me pushing food. They're just like normal, like I'm satiated, but like I could probably eat more, but I don't need to type of balance. And so we're kind of just holding it there so that, when I do have a holiday party or a Thanksgiving meal, we're under the assumption already that like I can kind of just take off, eat whatever those days, and like the normal numbers that I'm at will just kind of balance that out. So that's kind of what I'm doing, is like just having the knowledge that like I will go over like every other week or so, just kind of be a little off track here and there, but not pushing food every single day of the week just to like make that worse.
Yeah. And I have a lot of my clients right now where I would say there might be one on my roster where we're actively increasing food right now, but around the holidays, it's just kind of like, hey, let's just kind of keep everything the same, because that there's going to be an influx in calories at certain events. And so there's no need to really push food right now, unless you're very, very low, or you're at a position where like you're just burning through food, which I have one of my clients who is just eating an insane amount right now.
Same.
So
So
I told her, I was like, dude, we could increase. I was like, but we're going into Thanksgiving. So let's just go ahead and leave it. But if you eat more, I'm like, it doesn't
like, please,
matter.
please eat more. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
If you want to go for it, but yeah.
Yeah, I have a girl just like that, and she's like petite and it makes no sense. But like
Yep.
I see her food logs and I'm like, okay, this is like insane. But
Yeah.
um oh shoot, there was one more thing that I wanted to say with that. Oh, it was like clients in who are like in fat loss, and we're talking about like just compensating and whatnot. Um I'm losing my train of thought again. Okay, we'll come back to it if it comes back.
Nice. We'll circle back.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Marissa brought up also the Hunger-Fullness Scale. So kind of when you are eating, I think it's important to listen to your body. And of course, we're probably going to eat more than we typically would at a regular meal. But really paying attention to that, because it is very easy to fill your plate, eat what's on your plate, and then afterwards be like, oh my God, I feel disgusting. So taking your time when you're eating, that should have been something else that we should have added as a strategy.
Yeah.
Slowing down, making sure you're enjoying the food, that you're not feeling rushed or you're feeling, like you have to scarf everything down. If you're giving yourself time to eat, you're giving your body time to recognize and get your hunger signals and say, hey, we're full. Because once you get to that point, and if you keep eating, it's very easy to get to that point where like, wow, now I need to take my pants off. I need to sit down on the couch, or I need to excuse myself. I need to go to the bathroom because I don't feel well. So it's very, very easy to overeat in a situation like this. So again, I think again, having that expectation, I'm probably going to be more full than normal, but we don't want to get to that point where you just feel absolutely disgusting. So really taking your time eating, paying attention to what your body is telling you, and figure out where you are kind of on that scale and try not to go too far past.
Yeah, yeah. And I think two things from that. So the first thing is, again, with the Hunger-Fullness Scale, it's a Likert scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is stuffed to the max and 1 is I'm gonna eat my hand. And basically, like, the general recommendation is a 4 to 6 promotes weight maintenance. So if you always stay between a 4 and a 6 on the Hunger-Fullness Scale, so you're never like stuffed, but you're never like too hungry, it promotes general weight maintenance. But in this situation, like, what I would recommend is like, let's just not get to a 9 or 10. Like, let's just kind of stay in like the 7 to 8. That's kind of where I think you can be really golden. And I did remember my train of thought, so I'm going to bring this back in. And I think this is just kind of perspective overarching everything, so it just kind of relates to whatever. But when we're talking about allocating macros and fat loss, not fat loss, whatever, for the clients that maybe are in a fat loss phase during this time of year, and people that maybe they are actively trying to lose fat right now and they haven't given up and just pushed it off to the new year, maybe you won't see super fast progress or progress at all during this week, this Thanksgiving week. But what I want to remind you guys is that the average person in America gains roughly a pound on average per year. And over the holidays, that is, exacerbated. People tend to gain 5-10 pounds over the holidays every year because of the mindset that we have. So here's the thing, right? If we look at it from that lens, not going backwards and maintaining is like a huge win for the holiday season, to kind of just remember and be like, hey, like, this is fine too. Like, you are already 10 steps ahead of most people on January 1st if you just stay exactly where you're at. So like, don't take maintenance and not going backwards as a sign of you failed, because I think that's, especially even if you're in fat loss, I think that's especially important to remember and just keep perspective of. But yeah, so yeah, slowing down to eat, that was a great one that I need to add back into some stuff that I'm sure we'll mention shortly. Yeah.
And then again, I think those are kind of all of our tips.
Yeah.
And I think, again, kind of bringing it back, that with all of this stuff, whatever you decide to do, like, we want you to be happy with how you handled your eating habits and how you handled your aunt, I don't know, Kathy, who always makes a comment about your plate, whatever it is.
Karen.
Karen, yeah, Aunt Karen. that you feel good walking away from it, and trying to be present and in the moment, and really focus on the memories and less on the food. So, and with that being said too, like this also times, maybe we talk about your great grandma or your grandmother who always makes like her famous pecan pie or whatever it is. Like, don't feel like, oh, I can't have that because it's, it's too high in sugar and carbs, whatever. If that's the one time you get to eat that a year and it's your favorite thing in the world, go ahead and enjoy it.
Like, please eat it.
Yes. Yeah, please. And again, maybe don't eat the whole thing, but moderation, but you don't deprive yourself. So just really being in the moment, focusing on your friends and family, not stressing too much on food. So we hope that you guys found any of these helpful, and they help bring your stress down and you're not feeling super overwhelmed when you go into it. But yeah, so Marissa, you wanted to talk about one more thing?
Yeah. And then finally, I think too, sometimes what we don't realize in this journey is sometimes if you just take the pressure off yourself to be perfect or hit these targets or track this food on this holiday, it's like that almost promotes better behavior. Like as a result of like, just take your foot off the gas, take the pressure off and just be like, listen, whatever happens is okay. And I'm not going to put this pressure on myself to only eat lean turkey breast or whatever. Sometimes that like leaves you in a position to like make more relaxed and mindful decisions as a whole. So kind of just take the pressure off of yourself and like really decide to just honor whatever is going to make you feel best in that moment. And yeah, so basically at this point, this will be coming out on Tuesday, the 23rd. And so at this point, I will have released it already. So I do have like a holiday eating, quote unquote, survival guide that I have put out yesterday, Monday. So if you haven't already kind of jumped on that and you want to get a hold of that, it just goes over these tips pretty much exactly as we went into them, but just in a PDF format. So if you want us to send that to you, you can just DM the Barbell Lifestyle Podcast on Instagram and we'll send that out to you. And it's just a nice little kind of compact version of everything that we've talked about today to just help you and keep that, just as a reminder for years to come.
Yeah. Awesome, guys. So we hope that you got a lot of value out of this episode. We hope that you enjoyed it. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. You can find both of us on Instagram. You can find me at Christina Fit and Marissa's at Marissa Roy Fitness. Thank you guys so much for listening. Have a happy Thanksgiving, and we hope to see you back next week.